Hello, hello. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I didn't know if this would be like forum style or if it would be like webinar style.
It's like a Farmington Rotary casual virtual meeting style.
Excellent. It's my first.
Okay, there's a whole bunch of people getting into the waiting room.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
I'll actually wait about 5 minutes after the time just to give some people time to join the site. We haven't had too many people that have joined just using phone, but that's fine. Well, the three important people are here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Bear with me while I keep allowing people in. I'm not sure if I have to keep allowing them in or whether they're coming in automatically. I'm not sure.
Nice to see so many faces this morning. Smiling faces at that, at 8 o'clock.
Everybody's smiling. It's Farmington, for God's sake. And they get staying home, which is not always a good thing. Okay, there's another 6 people joining. Morning, Jerry.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good morning.
Very fine.
Hey, Kelly. How you doing, Margaret?
Good. Good to see your faces today.
I take it a few of you guys know each other.
Well, I used to work in West Bloomfield up until last January when I joined.
How long were you there,
Farmington.
Margaret?
So I was in West Bloomfield since 1998 and at central office as a coordinator for about 12
okay.
years.
Did you teach at the high school?
I taught at the high school. I taught high school biology.
Yes, you did. I was there for 2 years as a Spanish teacher. I was like, I knew that name.
I know that face.
Yep. So I was there 2 years and then stayed home with my kids for a few years.
Yeah, once I heard your voice, it all connected.
It is that voice. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Just a heads up for those that are on already. We record these meetings, so anything you say is being recorded. and will be publicized, not the actual words, but the meeting itself. We put it out on YouTube probably later today, and you can replay the meeting. The only thing I do is I usually cut off the front part of the meeting. All this stuff is not really relevant, so I wait until we're about to have the speakers go ahead, and I'll cut that part of the meeting off, and I'll play it all. I'll leave the recording all the way to the end. So you'll find out that if you check back later to see what somebody actually said. Okay, we're still getting people joining. They get a tardy. I see Diane, maybe Bob Herrera, maybe.
Mhm.
Well, you can hardly call 3 minutes tardy, but is that how you run your classrooms? I like to start on time when we had actual meetings. I was pretty mean to people. I would start it on time whether they were there or not, and most members got used to that. But with this medium, I've been a little more generous with the time and let people take up to the first 5 minutes to join the meeting.
A little more.
Just a little more. I'll give it a minute or so more.
Our routines and some of our norms a bit as we've moved from in-person to remote.
Yes.
That's not too dissimilar from what we're doing at schools.
No, not at all. I feel for you guys. I really do. Totally understand.
Good morning, folks. It's Barry Fraser here. Just a heads up to the speakers today. I'm coming in from Chatham, Ontario, Canada.
Wow.
Very cool.
So none of this applies to you, Barry.
Oh, I think everything will apply equally to us as well as what we're doing here over to the other side.
Sure, you've still got schools, you've still got kids to go there, you've still got staff to look after, you've still got parents. Yeah, it's going to be the same.
Yes, absolutely. All the same questions being posed.
I believe that's true.
Like for instance, okay, so we're grandparents. Well, we spent time over this past weekend as part of our bubble that we've had all summer, but we think that the bubble is going to change quickly once the 7 grandchildren go back to school.
Oh my goodness.
And 2 of them are two parents together are teachers. So there you go.
My goodness. Yeah, they could have joined this meeting too.
Yes, should have promoted better.
Well, if they don't read the Farmington Voice, they wouldn't get the extra information.
I see.
That's our local electronic newspaper.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, Johnny Hubrid
Well,
does a great job of publicizing our meetings for us.
I'm in the field of agriculture, and I just read this morning that the largest agriculture conference in Ontario in January is going to be all online this coming January. There's usually
Wow.
3,000 people go to that, and 2 other conferences in Ontario are all going to be merged together in January. It just shows how things are changing rapidly.
Yep. Okay, I'll begin the meeting. Welcome everybody. We have a wonderful meeting planned today, and I'm glad all 3 of the main speakers joined individually, so you can all be showing up on the screen there. The 3 speakers that I've got, and I don't know your roles per se in the school district, I just have the title I was given. So coming in today is Jennifer Kaminsky, Superintendent for Business Services. Kelly Coffin, Assistant Superintendent for Innovation and Strategic Planning. Awesome name. Margaret Hendrickson, Director of Curriculum and Assessment. And Diane Bauman and maybe Bob Herrera are on the call. No, Diane is, and Bob may be with her. So I didn't have a title for this, too much anyway. It was basically, in my mind, COVID-19 in Farmington School District. What the heck is going on and what can you do? And I've read the press and I believe, unless it's changed in the last 24 hours, what little I read says you're going virtual off the get-go. So you can answer that one and then you can take it away as much as you'd like it to be.
All right, good morning, everyone. Dr. Herrera is here on the call with us, so I didn't know if he wanted to have any opening remarks or if he just wants us to.
He's welcome to if he can. I had you three planned, but he's joining. Well, if he's joined, that's great. I want him to hear what we're all thinking. And welcome any parents that are on here who are also interested in what's being said and are welcome to contribute. I will be a little bit of a policeman. So if I hear stuff that to my ear and mind are not really appropriate for this conversation, I may at very least mute you. If it gets to the point where I really don't like it, you'll be cut off the call. Is that okay with everybody? You don't need to say yes. You can say no if you want to unmute yourself.
No, thank you for the opportunity to speak, but the three, this is Bob Herrera, the three we have in attendance today are more than capable of sharing the information from the district, so I'll let them.
That's what we thought, but I'm glad you're here.
All right, so we'll go ahead and jump right into that. So COVID-19 and Farmington Public Schools, you know, what could be going on? So one thing I think that it's important for people to understand is that while we are really busy in the day-to-day planning sessions, and I mean 24 hours of a day, not just a 9 to 5 thing, we also are looking at not only those challenges, and there are plenty of those, but we're also looking at the opportunities that this has brought to our educational system. One of the things that we hear from a lot of families, and that feedback has been so instrumental in our planning and preparation for returning. As you mentioned, we're learning at a distance to start, and that the board made that decision last week to commit to that through October 30th, and then we'll be revisiting that. If you're following some of the work in the legislation, we will be getting some new marching orders to do some extended planning that will allow the community to stay engaged in that process as we move forward. So that's kind of where our heads are right now in getting that information ready. So part of the commitment from the board we'll go stay virtual till October 30th was also our work in planning to start to phase in safely some face-to-face instruction. The bigger piece to this is the recognition that this is different than what happened in March. I think all educators will always remember March 13th. That was the day that we were directed that we had to be done, and as an industry had to completely flip the way we provided services to students. And some, probably some districts, some systems may have been more ready for that in part, but I can say no district was ready for that in its total. And so through that process, our educators did the best they could with what they had. And they've learned, and we have learned a lot through that process. And so while I recognize the challenges, the opportunities that a system can capitalize on when it's forced to really look differently at its core practices, which are our teaching and learning, we start to recognize that there's things that we did well in face-to-face, but we also recognize that there's things we may be able to do even better utilizing the technology now that we are becoming accustomed to. And so I I just wanted to share that this is about a bigger picture too, and I'm going to have Margaret talk a little bit about some of the investment that we've made as an organization, because we want to make sure that the community understands that we have, as a district, learned from that emergency planning. We have different expectations now than we did from the state in March, that we do now, and that we are moving education forward. And we've invested not only just in resources, but in our people. So Margaret, do you want to talk a little bit about some of that, that investment that we've made?
I think, you know, Kelly mentioned hearing voices of the community as we, to inform our plan. And I think we have been very intentional to bring in the voices of our staff into the planning process, because there was a lot of things that they learned from last spring that can deepen the work as we launch into learning at a distance in the fall. And so we want to give a lot of credit to the number of teachers that were connected to a variety of action teams, as well as all the staff who willingly filled out a large number of surveys to get an idea of how we could go from emergency continuity of learning in the spring to learning at a distance come fall. And I think one of the first things that we heard from staff as well as the community is on the structure of the day, the structure of the week, and how do we marry that live time, which we call synchronous experiences, where we have live meets, with the asynchronous experiences, those experiences in which the teacher might not be actively facilitating the learning. And how do we make sure that during these live experiences and these non-live experiences, that those are partnered and learning occurs in both of those times and teaching occurs in both of those times. And so that while you might not be getting X number of live sessions that you might equate to a normal in-person instructional day, what we've done is taking those things that we know occur in good in-person instruction, and we have now partnered them in these live and non-live times. And so staff actually started in spring doing professional development that has now continued through the summer to learn how to do good instructional learning design, taking that in-person practice, what we know about good remote learning, and really creating good learning plans. And so that is a lot of the learning that they've done from spring to the fall. So that is a huge investment in helping that transition. I think another investment is thinking about the tools we use to support instruction. And so we heard from staff and parents some pros and cons to using the Google Suite as well as Google Classroom to support that digital learning environment. But we learned a lot more about what's kind of needed and the features to make a really good digital learning environment. And so we very short order, as West Bloomfield did and many other districts did, moved from Google Classroom to what's called the learning management system, which is a much more robust online digital classroom. And we chose Canvas as our tool, similar to West Bloomfield and a number of other districts. And so that provides an opportunity for staff to collaborate in developing content within the system, but then delivering that content to students so that students have a much more user-friendly experience, and so do parents. And so while that does provide anxiety and stress because it has change, and every change has anxiety and stress, there's also excitement about what it can do for us in the short term and the long term, because this learning management system will really help us bridge those learning at a distance times to those face-to-face learning experiences that we transition, as well as what Kelly talked about, launching us into what do we want to be second year out, third year out, fourth year out, fifth year out with personalized learning. So there's been a financial commitment, but also a human capacity commitment to launching a learning management system. The other piece is that we really wanted to see, in marrying this live experience with this non-live experience, what additional tools do we need to invest in to support the teaching and the learning. And so we are using some personalized learning tools such as Lexia and Dreambox K5 to support those most high-risk learners at this point in terms of their growth and their development and their learning, as well as other tools to support our staff in their instruction and for families at home. the other layer of investment that we're making is really looking at what kind of in-home tools kids might need in terms of math manipulatives or literacy manipulatives or art materials as we transition from the in-person experience to at home. And so we've been looking at what kind of things we can send home within the first 3 weeks of school to kind of help transition. I think, you know, the challenge of the COVID and what Kelly mentioned was this quick change. We've had to plan for 3 different scenarios, just like every other district, and have that in a place so that it's ready to go. And in very short period of time, we've had accelerated time where we've really tried to lead good implementation processes, good messaging, good communication, good input from stakeholders so that we can be in a place of readiness. And it's been a lot for our staff. Our staff are drained starting the year. I think Dr. Hill can say his staff are probably feeling the same way, as everyone's already drained coming into the new year as opposed to being rejuvenated. So there's a lot of emotional investment that we're making and want to make in our staff. Have we done it perfectly? Probably not. Have we made really good attempts and we've had some really good connections supporting staff? Yes, but also those social emotional connections with students. So we've been making investments in how do we ensure social emotional learning becomes a part of everything that we do on a daily basis with students, because building that community in this digital learning environment will be very important. So it's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of sweat and some tears. But I think we're in a place similar to a lot of other districts that we're ready to roll. And what we need to do is give ourselves grace, and families need to give us grace and give themselves grace as we all transition this fall into new learnings. And I hate to say that word again, that new normal, because none of this is going to feel normal. But like Kelly said, there's some things we're going to do now that are going to become the norm and are going to make things better. The way we're integrating technology. I'm sure Dr. Hill experienced the same piece where the collaboration staff is having. I don't think we've ever seen this level of collaboration across grade levels and teachers as we had now, because we had to come together. And so I think we're going to, and then the use of technology that staff never thought they'd ever use, they're using. So I think it's going to make education a better. It's unfortunate that this is that twist that's caused us to have to shift so quickly as a system. But I know I'm long-winded. I apologize for that.
No, that's perfect.
That's kind of where we are.
I think, you know, another piece to this that we often hear from is, okay, so what's going to have to change for you to bring kids back into school? We hear that a lot. I think it's important to recognize that these decisions are complex and they are also local. So we have to, our focus has been from the beginning with our board committee is that the health and safety of those we serve is top priority. And so in order for us to feel that we have, we are safe to come back, we recognize we'll never be able to eliminate the risks, but we must be able to mitigate it and control the exposure piece to that. And so your facilities matter, your space matters, your staffing structures matter. So we have to take all of those things into account. One of the things that we wanted and prioritized was to have a workforce that was stable for our families so that we weren't going in and out between remote or distance learning and face-to-face, because that's what will happen as we would have to quarantine teachers. As you can imagine, we don't have people knocking down our doors to be substitute teachers at this point in a face-to-face environment, and that's very understandable. As a district, we do have our own pool of substitute teachers that we use, and we will be training them in our learning management system so that they will be ready to step in. But outside of that, it's a struggle to get people to come in and do that. So again, as we mentioned, there's new learning, and our staff are learning how to work differently together. And now that they are back, they're helping us figure out how do we phase this back in. So we are creating a dashboard If those of you who might have been able to view the presentation made to the board, there were key areas that we were looking at. So we're looking at not only what's happening in the state, but also what's happening in Oakland County and in our local community. And we're updating that weekly. Again, working with one of our school nurses, Mary Larson, as well as the health department to do that. And the other piece, like I said, is mitigating and controlling that risk. I can just share this brief story. My sister is a superintendent in a small district near the Lansing area. Her first day of in-person school is today. So the kids haven't come back yet. She has 4 teachers quarantined. So what is happening is that those teachers who came to work Monday for their opening day now have had to shift their teaching assignments and be ready to go for today. So when Margaret asks about the grace that we need to give not only ourselves, but hopefully others can understand at least a small piece of the complexity in this decision, and how we recognize we can't control everything, but how can we do it in our best way so that this isn't a back and forth with our families. One of the things that Dr. Herrera had shared at the beginning of all this planning is that we need to make sure that the instructional integrity is solid. And we have to make sure we're not asking too much of everyone where we pull away from that instructional integrity. And so when we made the decision to recommend learning at a distance, it was that we could do one thing and we would do it very well. And that is where our commitment is and continues to be. And that learning is only going to enhance what we do in a face-to-face setting as we phase back in.
I think as a school district, something that's different about our experience here than maybe a private business is that we are part of our communities in a way that a Starbucks or an Ann Taylor Loft or it is and isn't. And so I think all of us as district leaders have really tried to manage the voices of all the stakeholders that we impact, and we care about all the stakeholders that we impact. And it is a challenge when you know there's a continuum of perspective and a continuum of thought and continuum of context across our families. And that creates equity challenges. It creates anxiety and stress when you feel that the district isn't hearing you. And the thing is, we're hearing from everybody, and it's hard to get to that place of consensus in a way that's going to be equitable for everyone's context and equitable to everyone's thinking. And so it's been a real challenge, even within our staff, within our team, within our administrators, within the community. There's a lot of varied thinking. And but I will say we took, as what Kelly mentioned, is we really did read through a lot of what and heard from people and really tried to play that out. Okay, so here's this idea around lunchtime in the secondary. How would that work out? How would we have 20 kids at a time getting in from a bus at a secondary level 6 feet apart to their first hour class? We don't have large groups of kids mingling together. So when you really take a lot of suggestions and then you start playing it out into scenarios, you can get yourselves down to some rabbit holes as well as level of details. And all of a sudden you realize what we realized at the secondary level, and I don't know what factored into West Bloomfield's specific decision about remote at the secondary, is we realized all of a sudden we were losing minutes of every hour when we were trying to manage all the lunches and the getting kids in and out. And so we need more time to figure that out so we have really good instructional integrity. And so for any community member that's listening, it's not that we're not listening, it's that we are really taking all these ideas and trying to play them out and make the most ideal that we can make. And it's not easy for everyone to understand all the thinking behind it, but we are truly, truly listening to our staff and our families, even if not everyone's getting what they wanted. And I don't think any of us are getting what we wanted, because I don't think this is ideal for anybody. I think all of us would like to be in person and teach every day with every kid and see their faces. So.
And I know you'll hear in a minute from Jennifer around the budget and the financial implications that have
Anyone else?
of COVID. And so there are state and legislative issues that we also are grappling with. We expect that the governor is going to sign the executive order, and in that we get our pupil, we get our per pupil funding. But that's still where we're at. So districts have had to make decisions in hopes that that would come, but we still don't, we are pretty confident it'll happen. But those are the things that districts have to consider, is how far do we go down a path where we're counting on something from our state legislators. So, those are just some of the complexities, again, that are added on. And of course, we don't control, we certainly advocate, and we certainly, work and reach out from the educational perspective, but at the end of the day, that's, kind of up to them. So Jennifer, I don't know if you want to talk now about the money.
Yep. So to piggyback a little bit on what Kelly was saying, there are still many unknowns for our funding for the current fiscal year that started about 7 weeks ago. So we had to go into this year once again, and in this year being even harder to try and predict because of COVID, not knowing what our funding would be, not knowing what a reduction could mean for us moving forward. So we are still anticipating a reduction in our per pupil funding because of the significant decline in state revenues. And so if you think about the way schools are funded, for Farmington, about 70% of our revenue comes through the foundation allowance. And so that is our per pupil amount times our pretty much 90% of our fall enrollment and 10% of our previous spring enrollment. So we get this blended number, but that drives the majority of our funding. And so not knowing what our foundation allowance is for this year that we're operating in already, and then having to wait for that enrollment information, which doesn't occur till October, it makes it very hard to budget and to plan. And so, obviously we have to make assumptions and move forward with things. So we've had some additional costs, related to virtual learning. We're trying to provide the best, supplies and materials and everything instructionally so that our students have that good opportunity in the virtual environment. Another significant cost for us related to this has been the purchase of PPE equipment. So as we are looking at bringing staff and students back, we've had to consider masks and face shields. We've looked at temperature kiosks to try and implement some additional safety measures. And so that was a pretty significant amount. We're still waiting to get some of those supplies as well. So the good thing with that is we anticipate through FEMA funds that we'll be able to recoup 75% of that cost, which will be, a significant amount for us. So we're happy that we were able to apply and hopefully receive those funds. So there have been CARES Act dollars that have been allocated to school districts across Michigan. So Farmington received around $520,000 to help with additional costs incurred. And so there was some guidance that was provided as to how we could use those dollars. And Farmington pretty much allocated those dollars to, instructional materials. We implemented a new learning management system, which will help with the virtual environment as well. And so we really tried to focus those dollars on instruction versus using them for, say, PPE or things like that. So those are really kind of the big items. We're still waiting on guidance for other federal funds that have been allocated to us to help with additional costs. And those were dollars that were approved by the governor back at the beginning of July. So we did have a reduction to our 2020 fiscal year, and we found out about that in July. So our year had ended and they told us we're going to come in and take $175 per pupil. So for us, that's about $1.7 million. But at the same time, they came in and said, well, to help offset that, we're going to give you double that, $350 per pupil, or about $3.3 million that you can use in your upcoming school year, except they haven't provided guidance as to how we can spend those dollars. So we're still waiting on that. And hopefully that'll be coming soon so that we can, you know, plan costs accordingly. But we are still waiting on a number of things, which makes it hard to operate. Schools go through this pretty much every school year, where we start our fiscal year and we don't know what our funding is necessarily. So it's a hard dance to do. So that was all I had on the financial end. So I don't know if we
Jennifer, I have one question pertaining to that. I think it's obviously financial involved, but the question in my mind, I'm a computer guy. I've always been around computers since computers were invented, it seems. One question I had that every parent at home must, if they haven't got internet, what can the school district do to help?
Can I step in there, Jennifer?
Oh,
Yep,
sure.
absolutely.
Yeah, so we've been working with our director of technology in this piece, because this impacts staff as well as students.
Sure it
So
does.
in terms of quality of device they have, as well as quality of internet. And so from the staff side, we are in a good place because we are able to allow staff to come into the building and teach from the building. And so that they can have access to our Wi-Fi. So that is a good thing. The other good thing is our staff were using Chromebooks currently in the spring, and there were some strengths and challenges to the Chromebook in terms of the robustness of the device. And so we are able to launch into replacing those devices with actual laptops for staff this coming fall. So that is a large investment we're making. It was going to happen eventually anyway, so it's accelerating some of that process with existing dollars. So that is going to be very helpful for our staff, because the Intel processors, all of those types of things can better tackle what they're going to be doing. Our students, we did launch an in-home device program last spring that is actually continuing in now to ensure that our families have the devices they need at home. We do have enough of devices in the district that we didn't have to purchase additional devices, because within district we're almost one-to-one in terms of the quantity of devices we have and students. And so we handed out 3,800 devices last spring. And we'll be handing out more in the next few weeks. In terms of the Wi-Fi piece, we are encouraging residents and students to continue to connect with Comcast, et cetera, because there are still reduced price internet access. Some families were relying only on their cell phone service hotspots, which is so we're encouraging that. We have provided hotspots where we are able. Hotspots really aren't generally a viable option in terms of the quality that it provides. We are currently piloting setting up some access points on the outside of our buildings. We're going to look at 2 buildings right now and test those out so that families can come in their cars and or sit out on the grass and have access as well. I know the public library provides that as well. I know that conversations at the county level and Oakland schools level as to how we can ensure equity of access. And because we know just the cost of the internet, even though some of those packages are $15 a month, depending on where someone is financially, that could be challenged. So it is something we're committed to working to, and we continue to have conversations. Some of those things are outside of our ability to control, but we are trying to put things in place to maximize access, and waiting to hear what negotiations are happening at the county level and at Oakland schools to potentially help our families.
Bob or Jerry, a question on the outside world. There was talk years ago maybe of Comcast or Xfinity, whoever it is, or whoever your server is, providing broadband in the community. Has there ever been talk raised about doing that? This would be an ideal time to be doing that. And I wonder if they could turn it on and off.
Well, I think there's always discussion of it. It's always a matter of
Mark
cost.
says no. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, I was saying there's always a discussion of it. It's always a matter of cost and who pays for that community-wide Wi-Fi. There are opportunities for parents to get discounted rates, and during the initial phases, there were even free Wi-Fi services available, but they had to know how to navigate the application and get signed up, and that's always a challenge. One of the biggest challenges that we have is communicating with the families who do not have Wi-Fi and trying to nail that down. And some students just sort of fell off the radar, and so our staff is constantly trying to find where they are. So that's been one of the more I think serious challenges in terms of the teaching and learning piece, because some of the most needy students are in the most vulnerable situations, and that's vexing for all of us.
Thanks, Jerry.
And I would agree with Jerry regarding the the bigger issue of Wi-Fi accessibility for at least within the school community. I know there have been, in other communities I've served in, cities have provided Wi-Fi in certain areas, so our students and parents were able to navigate their way to an area so they could access Wi-Fi. Otherwise, one of the things we do is we provide hotspots for our students that aren't connected or don't have access. So we try to identify the students who don't have access to the internet, and then we provide them with hotspots.
Well, a similar question to both of you. Given the situation we're in, where we're having to make these decisions, I assume both school districts are concerned with the loss of students from your roster, if that's the right word for it, because that may well happen with parents who just can't possibly live in that world where there's kids who are supposed to be at home to do schooling, but the parents can't be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two ways to look at that. I think one of the issues for us is the level we can engage students that don't have appropriate supervision at home, and how do we make sure they stay connected with their classroom and their teacher and engaged in their learning throughout this process. I also think there's significant hardships on the parents, though, as they try to maintain their work, and so I think it's more situational per family in terms of how you try to address and support that child's needs. One of the things we've worked hard on in our plan is to try to provide many options and for parents through our, for example, as Margaret talked about, the LMS that allows students and parents to stay connected to the classroom and the teacher in 24/7, as opposed to just only during regular school hours. We also have tried to give parents options of different remote learning, and have tried to be more flexible on our timelines for parents to make those choices. So some parents may want to stay connected through our virtual, our remote learning plan, but other parents may want just to take advantage of a complete virtual option where they can be able to work with their children at a later time in the day when they are home and can focus on their students' needs. We also have worked out an agreement with the Y to try to support parents with some daycare, and we're assigning our paraprofessionals to the Y Care program to help support students as they learn, as they're in that daycare program. So these are, parents all have different needs. I think we're trying to consider what our resources and what our capacities are. We'll take a look at the programming options parents choose and commit to this fall. And then we'll just, as we see students and parents falling falling behind in their progress, we will continue to look for ways to best serve those each and individual parents and families.
And I think one of those pieces, Phil, that you were kind of referencing is the potential for loss of enrollment during this time. I know all districts in the county have been wondering about that. I know that the recent pieces that passed the Senate and that we anticipate the governor signing is some adjustments on how they calculate the number of students they count for our enrollment, so that a loss of enrollment this fall doesn't unduly harm a district that is already operating. So it's weighing heavier, I believe, Jennifer, on last spring's enrollment with a combination to this fall's. And so that should provide some stability. It won't undo all movement, but it will help out. I don't know, Jennifer, if you want to speak to that.
Well, if I could just jump in there quickly, though, just to bridge the two conversations. Yeah, I think the funding formula is fair, at least as I worked with Jennifer on that. We seem to think that that'll certainly help in terms of any significant formula loss. I guess where I was going with it is we still have to show student engagement in order to earn that FTE. I think that's where the struggle was. Yeah, the legislature came through with a formula that is favorable to us, but it's going to be our requirement to make sure that students are staying engaged so we can earn that FTE that I think the challenge is going to be. So yeah, it was, the one isn't as big of an issue for us anymore, but I still think that we have the accountability to show that students are engaged in earning those daily attendance pieces. And so we can collect full FTEs on those students. I think that's going to be the real challenge and burden for us as educators from an accountability standpoint in terms of collecting our full FTEs.
Yes, there was, they did alter how they're going to determine the enrollment or our membership count this year based on 75% of our final count for 2019-20 and then 25% of this year. So that will help with any significant decline in enrollment versus, how they typically handle it. But so they're calling it a super blend, something different from how we typically receive the funding and calculate that.
Jennifer, I saw there was a question in the chat regarding provision of lunch and services. So do you want to talk a little bit about what that looks like? Well, as much as we know right now what that looks like.
Can I interrupt? I'm not sure if Julie doesn't want to give, there's a Julie Poisson on the call, and she sent me a text, which you may all have gotten because it went to everyone. But if you don't mind me reading it, maybe you guys could answer that. Don't want you wandering off looking at the chat. Julie says, in regards to equity and food security, has there been any thought to passing out free and reduced lunches by bus so that students can pick it up at their elementary stop? I live near East, and I'm certain we are not providing anywhere near the amount of free and reduced lunches that we normally provide on a given person's school day.
So we, as we go back to this new school year, we do have to go back to the normal national school lunch and breakfast requirements. We are going to have 3 pickup sites to start off the school year. So I believe they are East Middle School, Farmington High, and North eventually. We might be starting out with 1 site as things get going for the school year, but that we'll do that at the locations where we have Y-Care. Our intent is to, offer lunches and breakfasts there as well. And we'll assess how those pickup sites are working. We do have information, from last year as to how many meals were served, whether they were free, reduced, paid. We'll be offering meals essentially to all of our students. So parents can choose to pick up lunches and pay for those. We don't know how that will go. And obviously we're going to be offering the free and reduced. We will have to track that information as the school year starts. So during the summer, we were able to offer breakfast and lunch 7 days a week to any child that was under the age of 18 or up to the age of 26 with a disability. We did not need to keep track of who they were, whether they qualified. It was open to all children. And so we actually had really good participation in that program. I think over a 2-week period, we probably served 14,000 breakfasts and lunches on average. So, and we also were able to participate in the USDA Farm to Families program, where they prepared boxes of vegetables, boxes of fruits, and then we also had the dairy piece. So there were boxes of cheese. And so when we distributed food, families could also take advantage of picking up, you know, one of those boxes or all 3 of them, depending on that. So that was another.
Can I interrupt one more time? Seem like I'm being the focus here. Everybody should know that if you unmute, you can put your question forward in person. It'll be on the recording. Sending it to me as a text is fine. I'll be happy to read it and get it through, but it might be easier if you unmute and put forward your question. I have 2 more here. By continuing with Julie Poisson, her comment continued, my kids attended the newcomer program at Beachview. Many of those parents only had 1 car. Some had no car at all. I don't know if there was a question there, Julie, but at least that was a statement. I also got one from Leslie Amore. We have 2 students. Once the time changed to pick up lunches, we were not able to get them anymore because the time didn't work with our schedule. Again, a statement, not a question.
So to talk about whether, say, lunches could be delivered to certain sites, we did start out the program in the summer with taking breakfast and lunch to various elementary sites. I think we chose maybe 3 or 4. And what nutrition found was, you know, people were still driving there to pick those up. And so if they were going to drive there, you know, we had 3 other distribution sites that were available, you know, within a close radius. And so that was discontinued just based on the number of people that had shown up to those sites originally. So that ran for a few weeks. As far as the time, you know, I would encourage you to contact, if the times don't work, I would encourage you to contact our nutrition services department. I know they're always willing to work with parents, with families, and the students so that, you know, we can get our families what they need. So please feel free to reach out to that department directly.
Thank you. This has been fabulous so far. I'm not sure what everybody else thinks, but I'm thoroughly enjoying this. There's a lot of people with a mute button. If you'd like to ask some questions, now's your chance. Who knows when we'll get a chance to do this again. Although my current thought on when COVID will go away is possibly never. And we may be doing more of these because at least in terms of Rotary, we found this to be very useful. COVID has been good to us in that way. We were doing Zoom meetings before, but now we're really doing Zoom meetings this way, and we can get people like yourselves to come and talk to our members and the community if they're willing to join in. So I'm not sure where I was going with that, but I'll stop rambling and let the questions come on you. It's gone quiet.
The only thing that we could ask of everybody that's in attendance is when Thursday mornings come around 8 o'clock, we're almost always here on Zoom, except for the last Thursday of the month. And the access is the same every week. So you don't have to try to remember what it was. You can go back, click on the link. It's the quickest way to get into the meeting, but we would be happy to see you anytime. And if you have a message to put out, you could do it weekly through Rotary, and that's what we're here for. Just help to get the word out.
I have a question about the new learning path for the 6 through 12. So I know we've gone through from hybrid to all remote start, and now we've switched from the Edgenuity path to a path that mirrors the remote path for the 6 through 12. So what I'm curious is, let's say best thing happens, and let's assume November 2nd, we go back to school full time. Not going to happen, but let's think positive. What happens to those kids who don't want to go back to school, who want to stay in that virtual path? Will they be sitting at a computer from 7:30 to 2:30 watching their peers each taped classroom? How will that look at the high school level?
So thanks, Julie. I can start, and Margaret, then feel free to jump in and add. But so I'm going to give a little bit of a background. And again, one of the things we started with was the information and feedback we were getting from families. So as Dr. Herrera mentioned, we did want to offer multiple opportunities. We recognize that each and every family has different circumstances, and we really wanted to be as accommodating as possible. So we offered this virtual learning path that allowed for a self-paced, where there wasn't necessarily a requirement at a specific time to be in a specific class with a specific teacher, because we recognize that doesn't always work for all of our families. As with many virtual learning at schools and other opportunities, academies, we partnered with a third-party vendor who provides the content. They currently provide content for us in our traditional face-to-face high school for kids who want to take accelerated courses, for kids who maybe need to make up a course that they missed, or simply a course we don't offer at one of our comprehensive high schools. So we kept with that partnership agreement. We thought, going into this, that we might have 50 to 100 families at the 6-12 level that may want to choose this path, because it is for a very, a focused group of families. What we found is that as we continue to consider the decisions of going face-to-face at some level, either through a hybrid, at that time it was through a hybrid plan, we heard loud and clear from our families that they just didn't feel comfortable yet sending kids back, and they wanted an option where they could know that their child would be able to work from home. Some said for an extended period of time. Other families really wanted it for the semester. So when we got our enrollment, we had had asked parents to make that decision. We recognized that was a tough decision because they did not have all the information and weren't always comfortable, but they did know that they just weren't comfortable with going back face to face. So we had 906 students enroll in that program. That's a big difference from what we were planning on from the staffing perspective. So we have met with a work group. Again, tons of feedback from families saying, please, can you just pause this decision? Can you just let us have more time to make that decision as we would learn more information? And that's what we did. So our teachers and administrators came together and said, we have 900 students that really want to stay at home and learn from home, and they still do want that connection with the Farmington teacher. Some still want to participate in the band and the orchestra and the choir, which are so vitally important to education for their child. And so our teachers said, we can figure this out. So we have 2 work groups that are working currently. Lisa Mockenbridge is the person facilitating that work at the 612. And she has a work group that's working to exactly what Julie said, what happens if. So something in that first semester. And so if for some reason the district is able to come back fully face-to-face, but we still have families that are not comfortable, we do want to have some offering for that gap during that semester. We have an entirely another work group with teachers and building administrators that are working on what would it look like if we had that option for second semester as well. Again, our crystal ball, I always say, is very, very cloudy at the moment. So, but we'll get that information. But that is our intent, is we want to do that. The virtual path is still available for those who truly just want a self-paced, work at their own time situation. And we currently have about 30 students who've signed up for that at this point. So the decision was just paused, but it really was based on that feedback we were receiving from our parents.
So just to clarify, those kids who are currently going to be virtual, if we go back into the classroom, the work group hasn't quite figured out how they're going to handle those kids yet. Is that accurate from what I heard?
What we know is that the kids will be able to remain virtual. What that will look like, and we're just working out the details for that. Yes.
Thank you.
And a lot of that was families were not interested in the ingenuity piece. We know a lot of districts are using some third-party curriculums to support that. And one of the things in terms of challenges that we face is, even if we're in person, there's the potential that there will be people remote, not by choice, but by being quarantined, things like that. So teachers will have to learn to manage in-person instruction and some remote, because if someone's quarantined, they still need access to instruction. And so this question actually applies to every teacher and a potential for every student, even if they don't make a choice to stay remote for a given X amount of time, that there is opportunities where unfortunately some students will be quarantined for 14 days and therefore will need to continue access to instruction. There was a question from Beth Hewlett around Canvas. So Canvas is our learning management system that we mentioned that will be rolling out this fall. It does take a while to get everything set up on the back end to make sure teachers' information's in there, students' information in there, and teachers are trained. And so we've done an accelerated process to get Canvas functional. So we just released Canvas to our staff yesterday. They are engaged in professional learning and are being given some very specific expectations of what to have ready for the first week of school. And an example of that is to have a home page for their course and to have their announcements running where they can release their learning plans. And there's way more sophisticated features than that, and they will add those in over time. And so right now we are working on a video that will go out to families this week that kind of talks a little bit more about what Canvas is and how that connects to the learning experience. Then next week, there will be additional information to families about how the parents access Canvas and students access Canvas. So we've been very heavy on making sure our staff capacity is built and that they have access. And so what we're just working on now is, how do we communicate to parents, this is how you log in? How do we communicate to students, this is how you log in? What is nice for families and for parents is that they can go to a website that we'll share, or they can download the Canvas app and have it on their phone anytime, anywhere. What is nice is that students will have one dashboard. They'll see all of their classes. For example, secondary will see 6 classes. There'll be a tile for each class. And what's nice for a parent is that when I go into Canvas, I can see my first grader information, I can see my 5th grader information and my 9th grader information, and I can click to see and access what the students have. So we are working on ensuring that we have it ready for staff, but they have some minimum expectations. And when I say minimum, it's because there's such a big learning curve. So it's the quick start items to get people going. And then we'll have a learning curve for parents and students as well. So a lot of that first week and a half of school will be getting kids understanding Canvas, getting parents up and going on Canvas. So we will be
fabulous.
more about that. So we have been talking, Beth, about some live question and answers around the Canvas. And so right now we're doing a launch video that kind of lets lets us share a little bit about Canvas. Let's share a little bit about instruction, how those connect. And then we can think about doing some parent universities, et cetera, on Canvas that are more live. We just need to get staff up and going, admin up and going, get you in, and then we'll be sure to connect. And we'd love to reach out to the PTA Council to help with that.
Thanks for reading the notes for me.
I'm used to it. This is what I do every day.
No, that's cool. This is, I'm enjoying this so much, and I'm not from Farmington, I'm from West Bloomfield, and don't hold that against me. But this is so good. I don't know if you guys are able or willing to do it later, but I'd probably just marked in my calendar that we would like to do this again late October, early September, early November. If you guys are willing and able, I'll check with Bob to make sure you're allowed to do that.
We would love to do that. Thank you.
Love to do that.
So PTA, contact me and we'll make sure that you're notified in some way that this is going on, and we'll arrange a date and let you know in advance.
Yeah, thanks. Now you see how decisions are made in Farmington.
Awesome.
right from that group. But I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. We would appreciate that.
Thanks, Bob. It is Bob, not Robert, right?
Yes, feel free to call me Bob.
We
Any
are
other
a
questions?
first
We can
name
go on.
bunch.
Sorry, on you go, Lynn.
We are a first name bunch in Rotary, so you know, it's not disrespectful for us to use everybody's first name.
Yeah.
It's a friendly way to get the information out. So
Yeah, we're the same way.
this has been so great. I'm looking forward to opportunities where we can spread the information to the public, because every avenue to get that information out is important, not just one pipeline that you hope everybody gets to, because everybody doesn't.
Yes.
So whatever we can do to facilitate that, Rotary will be here to help you out. Just let us know what you need.
And just to add to that, as I say, the recording of this meeting will be processed. It takes about a couple of hours to process and get ready, but I'll have it out on our website probably sometime later after lunch. The PTA or anybody else can pass on the link to our current website, farmingtonrotaryclub.org, and in the left-hand corner on the panel is a virtual meeting library, and all of these meetings are there. So you can click on this one when it's available and watch it. And those that didn't get it and you want them to see it, they could go there. There's one other one I'll point out. We had a speaker from the Oakland Health Organization, our own version of Dr. Fauci. He's Russell Faust is the guy in Oakland County, and he gave a great presentation, scared the bejesus out of me, talking about, you know, COVID not going away and stuff like that. But he did give some very good information on what really happens with testing and why it's sometimes not effective and sometimes just wait 2 weeks and you'll know your answer anyway. So send people out there, farmingtonrotaryclub.org, and there's a virtual meeting library, and they can see all those. We've got about 12 out there, 12 consecutive weeks. So this one will be out there in a couple hours.
Thank you. We appreciate you giving us your time. It's we enjoy talking to everybody, and every conversation makes us better in our thinking and informs our thinking. And with Kelly and I also being new to Farmington and the district, it's really nice for us to be able to connect more with the community, even if some of you are in West Bloomfield still.
Thank you.
I'd say that I was born and raised in West Bloomfield. I got there in 1998 and left just this last year. So I can do what I can do now because of my time in West Bloomfield. And so I still consider myself being from West Bloomfield. So.
Okay, Lynn, have you anything else to add?
I had something, but you know, at my age, it kind of disappears as fast as it comes. No, not at this point. I'm just happy with the meeting today. I think it was fantastic.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Barry.
So Barry Fraser, who's on the call on the meeting, initiated a mental health committee for our Rotary district a couple of years ago, and it has moved forward. Collier Smith, who spoke to your club, has worked with the Ann Arbor Marathon. And this year, the Ann Arbor Marathon, produced by Epic Races, is going to donate proceeds from their races to mental health organizations. Their first race is virtual, and it is starting September 14th. I'm going to send you the information. I don't know if Collier has sent it to you, but I'm going to send it again. And I'm mentioning this because from the school district perspective, this may be something to consider offering to the Interact clubs, to all of the students who might want to participate. The race goes from September 14th through October 10th, which is the World Mental Health Day, so it culminates that day. The registration fees are $25 unless you want all of the swag that goes with it, and then it's $35. So I'm hoping that some of our Rotary clubs will be able to sponsor students if the entry fee is too steep. But what I feel is important about this is the fact that all students, all parents, all of us are facing emotional and mental health issues that perhaps we didn't in the past. And this is an opportunity to kind of have an outlet. So if you will, Phil, if I can send this to you, and then if you could pass it along to whoever would be appropriate in the Farmington School District, or I can send the link so that you can see this. I think it might be worth mentioning at least. Another thing, your football season is pretty much changed this year. So I know in West Bloomfield, there's talk about maybe this would be something that the football team would participate in if they're interested. So,
okay, just so everybody knows, Cynthia is the wife of the superintendent of West Bloomfield Schools, just in case you noticed the name. Okay, unless there's any more questions, I'm going to call it a day. We allow these meetings to run on as long as we normally need, but if there are no immediate questions, I'll let you three get back to your virtual work, as well as Bob and everybody else.
Did Barry have a comment that he wanted to?
You ready, Barry?
Yeah, yes, yes, I do. I know that. Oh.
No, you're muted, Barry. There we go.
There, just to supplement what Cynthia just said, remind me that our Rotary Club is having a Zoom meeting again next week on the topic of mental health. And so when the links come in on that over the next very few days from our club president, I'll flip that over to you, Phil, and perhaps
Sure.
you can move that around, because next week will be a strong feature on mental health support mechanisms within Chatham-Kent.
Great, thanks.
And just a comment to follow that is that the presentation that Collier Smith made to this club is in our library. So that's something that you might want to take a look at, just to see the quality of it and what it's all about.
And I might add that Collier Smith presented about a month ago now his presentation to the Chatham Club. So there's obviously a lot of potential here for cross connects.
Okay, I'll let you three, as I said before, I'll let you three get back to work and everybody else can relax. So I'll stop the meeting now and you'll see it on our library in a few hours. Thanks again. Thanks very much to you. Thank you.